Okay, so really happy to be able to speak today to someone whose work I've been really involved in during last year, and I had this really nice invitation from Autêntica Contemporânea, who asked me if I would like to speak a little bit with Selby Wynn Schwartz, the author of After Safo, and As Filhas de Safo, which has just been released by Autêntica Contemporânea. And to me, is super special to be able to talk to her. It's been an incredible experience to be able to really get into this book. And I couldn't say the story because there's not properly a plot, but the text. And I'll talk about this to Selby. But first of all, perhaps I just would like you, Selby, to introduce yourself to the Brazilian readers. And it's an honor to have you here and to be able to speak to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nara, for being here with me. I think the first thing we should do is to reverse the idea of who is honored. I'm a great admirer of your work both as a writer and as a translator, and I always feel grateful to translators because translators are the people who open the doors that surround a book and open them onto other worlds and for other readers. And so I always want to see translators honored and recognized. And it's a great privilege to speak with you today. So thank you both for your work in opening doors around this book that I've written, and also for your willingness to talk with me today about the conversation in a way that we have already had in the process of thinking about how to transform this book for a new readership. So I'm very happy to be here today. As Nara said, I'm Selby Wynn Schwartz. I'm the writer. We can both have the same. We can do this together, actually. So we both have the same set of copies of the book.
Oh, fantastic! All these books in different languages, and yeah, wonderful.
I'm delighted to be able to have this opportunity to introduce this book to new readers, thanks to Nara's wonderful skills. I wrote this book. This book was published by Galley Beggar Press in English in 2022, and it was, as a great surprise to me, longlisted for the Booker Prize in that year, and that has been also a great honor in my life. So I'm currently here in Rome. I'm the 2025 Joseph Brodsky Fellow in Literature at the American Academy of Rome this year. So I'm speaking to you from the Roman sunshine.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I'm speaking to the London non-sunshine. Never mind. Selby, I just wanted to tell you and everyone who's going to be seeing us about how I came across your book. It's an interesting, peculiar story because I was out in London in Charing Cross Road, as you probably know, a road full of bookshops, and I organized to meet someone there. So this person was late, so I went to Foyle's bookshop just to spend some time and kill time and just wait around. And as I was there, this caught my eye. And I was standing up and just starting to look through it. And then I read this, and I'm going to read this part. Rina Fátio, 1889. Sorry, I need my glasses, guys. It's old age, and that's what happens. In 1889, Rina's mother told her something wordlessly that she never forgot. Her mother was standing at the window, looking out in a white dress that hung off her shoulders. Then suddenly her mother went out of the window. She plummeted, her dress trailing like a scrap of paper. Her body landed 2 floors down, bent into a bad shape. That was what Rina Fatio's mother had to say to her. When I read that, I thought, I need to take this home, and I really need to read this book. And I started looking through it, and I didn't quite understand if this was going to be fiction, non-fiction, and the form was really catching my eyes, and I think I was so intrigued by that passage, but also the form of the book. So I bought, and then unfortunately for me, my friend arrived and I had to stop reading. That's fine. I had bought it and I brought home and I started reading that. And then soon after, I contacted Autêntica and I said, guys, we've got to translate this. This is amazing. It's incredible in many, many ways. Not only because of the content and the text and everything, your research. I want to talk about this later, but also because of the form, because of the voice, because there's so many elements that I think they are absolutely stunning in your book. So I wanted to start asking you precisely about how this book appeared to you. How did you have the idea of this? It makes me overwhelmed to think the amount of work you must have had to do this, because it's not only writing, it's one part of it, but also the research you have to do. And not only that, the emotional involvement you have to have with all these personalities / characters, and it's insane. How did you do this?
I'm glad we started with the insanity of the writer. And I want to say, Nara, now that you've read this passage, can we start, before I answer these questions, with you reading your translation of that passage?
Of course. Yes, let me find it here. Hang on. It's beginning of chapter 2, I think.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Rina Fátio, 1876. Não, peraí, é isso mesmo. Não, é aqui. Rina Fátio, 1889. Em 1889, a mãe de Rina disse à filha, sem palavras, algo de que ela nunca se esqueceria. A mãe estava de pé diante da janela, olhando para fora, usando um vestido branco com as alças que deslizavam pelos ombros. De repente, a mãe caiu da janela, desmoronou com seu vestido trêmulo como um rasgo de folha de papel. Seu corpo precipitado de 2 andares, dobrado em péssimo estado. Foi isso que a mãe de Rina Fátio disse a ela.
Thank you.
I love this. It's just
yes, I always want to spotlight the work of the translator, and especially in this case when so much care has gone into it. The origin story of why this translation exists is because, well, thanks to your late friend also, but also thanks to the care that you took and you and the initiative that you took in proposing it. So it's, in that sense, I think, a story that's very much about what translators make possible in many ways in the world. And so I'm grateful also that you opened this possibility for translation.
Thank you, Selby.
And yes, you asked me about the sort of the origin story of the book from my side, and about the research and the envisioning of the book, and then you ended by saying, it's kind of the insanity of writers. The insanity, but quite a lot of love. I have a degree, I have a PhD in comparative literature, so that's how I was trained as a scholar. And when I was in graduate school at UC Berkeley, I took a seminar on Italian women writers in the 20th century, for example, and so I read Sibilla Laramo, who you read part of the early life when she was still Rina Fátio, but became Sibilla Laramo, changed her name, and wrote Una Donna, which was, maybe considered now very early autofiction, but was a strong feminist text at the turn of the century, and really made a difference in the literary landscape about what women could write, what women could say, even in the sphere. So I had read about her. I knew also a little bit about the history of Eleonora Duse, for example, the actress. But nobody had ever talked to me about this person that I discovered much later, called Lina Poletti, who was an Italian poet, playwright, feminist. She was queer. She was quite bold in her life. She often dressed in very masculine ways. She wanted to go to university, even though her family didn't have a lot of money and really did not want her to go. And she went anyway and studied Carducci and wrote a thesis. And then she went on to have to meet Sibilla Ramo at a feminist conference. And as far as we know, they went home together. And she had a relationship with this very important figure in Italian feminism and Italian literature, and later, not much later, had a relationship with the actress Eleonora Duse. So it seems like someone should have told me at some point, also Lina Poletti. I wish someone had, but nobody did. And so when I finally came across her name, I a little bit fell in love with the idea of her, of who was Lina Poletti, and I wanted there to be something I could read. Actually, I thought, maybe there's a biography, or there's an autobiography, or there's, maybe there's a film or a documentary, or maybe there's archives, and I could plunge in and learn from someone who was Lina Poletti, and what should I have known when I was first, reading Sibilla Ramo, for example. So I looked around and I found some chapters in one book by an Italian scholar called Alessandra Cegni, who's here in Rome, but only a few chapters in a book called Gli Occhi Eroici. And I found some letters that had been preserved, but not very many, that were published also by Alessandra Cegni. So really, there wasn't the book that I wanted, let's say, and I was a bit discouraged because I could have spent a lot of the afternoon, reading about the life of Lina Poletti. And after I was discouraged, I thought, well, I want a life, or maybe even many lives, of Lina Poletti to exist in the world. And so if I want that, and it doesn't exist already, maybe I have to imagine it myself. And that was the sort of the beginning of wanting Lina Poletti to have, as if I could offer her something, or the memory of her something, as if I could maybe just imagine into being a constellation of lives all around her, of possibilities, of people she might have known, might have read, of people who, even if she never met them, would travel in the sphere that she maybe would have traveled in. And so I began to sort of collect who would be the extended circle or constellation or archipelago of lives. And that entailed making some choices. I'm a limited person. I speak limited number of languages. I'm trained in a particular way. I have, only one set of identities. So there were limits that I brought. And then there were some choices that I made. For example, I cut out almost all of the histories of men from that time, because in general, histories of men are at the center of that time. They're the important ones. They're the great ones. They're the center. And I just felt like, I want space for, if I want to put someone like Lina Poletti and all of the lives around her life at the center of the stage, maybe I'll just shove, not forever, just shove off for a minute to the side all the lives that are usually in the center. And certainly if this were a nonfiction book, it would be a different book. There are many nonfiction books already, for example, about the life of Gabriele D'Annunzio. He doesn't need me.
So that is a good point. That's such a good point. I love this image of the archipelago that you said, of this, because it feels a little bit like it's almost like a mosaic of lives that you put together. So would it be fair to say that your first obsession was then with Lina Poletti, and then
and I was the way that you are when you're in love. You want to stay up all night. You know everything about them. Everything is fascinating. You annoy your friends by saying, "Then another thing about Lina Poletti," and they're like, "Okay, thank you." That was
And I think coming from writers is even perhaps worse, because we do get very obsessed about things, and it just doesn't go away. Like, these people live with us, I guess, for a long time. It's beautiful to hear you saying this, because I did think about who started first. Like who's this person that kind of sparkled in started your investigation. And obviously for your background and your studies and all that, you already had a lot of baggage on that. But it's interesting to see that it started with her, and it's a little bit chronological. Is it fair to say that is?
I mean, it is and it isn't. I love that you started our conversation by saying there isn't really a plot, and in some profound sense, this is true. It isn't an arc. It isn't, for example, the life of a great man. He's born, he does great things. Yeah. It's not like that. And so even though in a sense it's always moving forward, there are also, and I think this is true of the time that I'm writing about, which is, late 19th century, early 20th century, in mostly in Europe, people moving around, mostly women. At least that's how they identified at that time. We don't know now how they might identify. We have other words, we have categories that like trans and non-binary and agender that people didn't have then. So I think it's chronological in the sense that there is a forward movement, but it also it goes a little forward and a little back, or it's still catching up, or there's an interlacing of time or a concentration of time around certain years, like 1914 or 1928, when a lot of things seem to be rushing into being at once. And so it's not exactly chronological, but I hope that there is a momentum of forwardness. And that was true also of the history of feminism. For example, that time there was forward momentum, but there were also, moments of being discouraged, of being set back, or moments when something happened in one place and hadn't yet happened in another. And you can see that in the history of, for example, of the suffrage movement, of women being allowed to vote. It didn't all happen at once everywhere. It happened a little bit, or women being allowed to go to university. It happened in fits and starts.
Yeah, interesting, because it's so true to that, isn't it? It's like we take one step forward and then two back, or two forwards and one back. And it still happens now, right? I mean, still.
Yeah, I was just going to say, unfortunately, we're still having very much this movement where, there's a great momentum and a great collective energy to move forward, and then also a very strong, powerful, and terrifying push back. Push back about a lot of marginalized subjectivities, including women, including queer people, including trans people, including, people who are racialized minorities, people who are immigrants. So there's that we take two steps forward and one step back, or one step forward, I think it's that we come as much as we can, we walk forward all together, and the pushback literally is coming from entrenched power structures.
True. I want to go back to this after a little while. This whole because to me, Selby, this book always sounds very political, without the pretentiousness of it. Of course, I mean, it probably would never be your intention. I mean, that would be just not right at all. If that would be the but it does resonate in a way that is political, because it talks about women that were marginalized, including when you go researching for it, even your research, your work of research about the life for the life of these women, and you don't find a lot of records. You find bits and fragments and all of that, and it's so beautiful that your book has this form of fragments. Obviously we can think of Safo too, but it's, to me, also reflects a little bit on the almost like we're made of gaps, and this is so stamped in the book, this gaps that we just jump from here to there because nothing happened here. So, or perhaps we couldn't do this at a certain time, and then these gaps are also part of our history as women. And I also think another thing that you might not want to hear, that sounds political, but it is to me.
No, I want to hear the political.
No, it's not.
Absolutely, please.
but it is in a way, because I think and I think it's like any work of art. If something sort of sparks in you this sort of reflection or debate about things, and it's great. And I think one other thing that really, I remember thinking about this for so long, was the voice, the we that you introduced in there. How did you think of that? It sounds so original. It was, when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, why I didn't think of this before. Now Selby has done it, so I can't copy her. How was that?
I think we're sharing, so I'm not into the possession of. I'm certainly not the only person who thinks chorally. I mean, yeah, there are other writers. I think of Meet Us by the Roaring Sea, for example, is a novel that has a choral. Anyway, many. And I think about also, you were talking about fragments and what's left to us of fragments. And I'm really indebted to the work of Saidiya Hartman, even though I'm doing something different. But that's someone who, on the side of the archive, on the side of extremely responsible scholarship, is taking, these tiny shreds of lives that have often, of Black women, of Black girls in the US who have been pathologized, criminalized, not just shoved to the side or marginalized, but like actively written into these very demeaning forms of history that we have, and recorded that way. And that's sort of, in a way, what we have. And I think about the tenderness with which she recovers that, and the way that she sets these lives next to each other. Anyway, I can't do what she can do, but I really admire also that kind of work. So I think I'm not alone, and I'm happy to share, if I can share anything with you as a writer. But the we, I mean, it's a choral we. I did think of it as, I'm writing about Safo, but I'm thinking also about people who, like Ava Palmer is one of the people in the book, and she was very interested in the history of Greek theater, in fact, in reviving Greek theater and dance and song music as a tradition. And so the chorus in Greek theater, is usually commenting on the action. Like, again, the chorus is off to the side of the stage, watching and being afraid, being hopeful, being, having opinions. But I wanted also a chorus or choral voice that could be at the center of the stage, that could be, so that we could take action. And I mean that both in a past and present way. I believe very much in political collectives. I participate as much as I can in transfeminist collectives. Like here in Italy, we have Non Una di Meno, which is indebted to Latin American feminism. So I believe in the collective, even the messy collective, and the diversity of voices in the we. So we don't all have to be the same, in fact, but we can maybe try to go forward together and to make alliances around things that we believe in and that we want to support together. So the we is partly political, and so it's partly personal, as you know. And it's partly theatrical. So like,
yes,
to have a we at the center of the stage means that the we can speak of our own lives, of our attempts to navigate the world, and also that the we can change. That's important to me. Like the we where I'm writing, in the beginning when I'm writing, I think of a very young we. Like we don't know. We've never, we're just starting. We're young. Yeah. We're just trying to find books. Even we haven't met each other. We're learning about the world often through reading, and that's how I was. That's how I am.
That's how it starts the book, pretty much, isn't it? Like we don't have a name yet.
Yeah. We don't know. We're trying to find out. And I wanted a we that can make mistakes, that can learn from mistakes, that can change over time, that can realize, we didn't know, or we weren't at that space yet, and can maybe, my hope is that if we begin as readers, we also develop a capacity, and kind of agentic capacity, also to, let's say, to write our own lives, or to help support the writing of lives around us. And I mean that in a broad way, not just that we all become writers or that we stop being readers, absolutely not, but that that we can feel a sense of autonomy, of being able to decide for ourselves how to try to create the stuff of our lives and how to support other people having choices, having agency, having autonomy, being able to say for themselves what their lives mean, what their names are, what their pronouns are, how they want to walk in the world. So I think it is, in that sense, that's what I believe politically also.
That is so beautiful. It makes so much sense. It was really striking to me when I was reading that, and I because I felt part of it. Like, even I know it sounds so cliche to say that, but it worked like that to me. It was.
I don't want to force anyone to join the We, I believe.
No, I know that, but I did.
Yeah,
I did.
An invitation, that makes me very joyous. Thank you. Thank you for being.
I join. Absolutely do. Yes. I'm just checking time here just to make sure we have. I just have a couple of more questions before we kind of wrap up. But this is just a very just trivial question, but it's just out of curiosity. I was very curious to know this, because I have to say, I repeat, I was overwhelmed looking at and imagining the work that went behind this, and also in the end, you obviously mention all the resources and references, and it's extensive. You've been so busy writing this book, no doubt. But this is such just a curiosity I have. How long did you? I know it's a silly question. How long did you take to write this?
Yeah, well, I am an inveterate reader, and I'm a fast reader, actually. So I'm once I get into something, I just want to, as I said, I'd like to stay up all night reading about it. So that helps a bit. But I was also teaching full time when I began this project. So teaching is not just full-time job, but it's also a job that, for me, is full-hearted. It's like my attention, my care, my focus is turned towards my students in those times. That's what I think teaching is. How can I be present? How can I give? How can I turn towards them while we're together? So I was doing, sort of research on the side, library research mostly, and trying to learn things and doing a lot of assembling and gathering. And then the moment of writing took me not quite a year, an academic year, let's say, of doing nothing but writing. I had a lot of time, and that was a gift.
Wow.
And I think I really plunged in and immersed myself, and I was basing it on the research that I had done. Although always when I'm writing, I need to learn new things that I didn't know that I needed to learn until I got there. I imagine this happens to you. You think, problem.
I wonder, because I was thinking, because when I write, I also go off a bit, like with the topics of research, and I just start going off and get very distracted. So I don't have a lot of focus sometimes, because I just get distracted with other things. And I was wondering how on earth you managed to write this in, like, now you're saying an academic year. That's almost impossible in my head.
Yeah, nothing else. Really nothing else.
Yeah.
Maybe I can show you. Okay, I'll show you. I don't have my notebooks here from after Safo, but I have my new notebooks, and I'll just show you, because, well, I don't know. It's a little bit,
please do.
What it looks like. I'll show you one. Okay, so this is one from now. So I have these like tiny scribbly notebooks that have little lists of things that are like, don't forget, this is, you could also do this, and I just keep them, and nobody has to read them but me. And it's like a place where I gather things. Yes. So I try to keep those, I don't know what to call them. They're like gathering places for ideas, for quotes, for things I'm trying to remember. And that's what I carry around with me. I have very heavy suitcases when I travel, because books I'm reading plus notes that I feel like
they sort of guide you when you are writing the book, and then you revisit those things, perhaps.
Yeah, they're there for me, is how I feel. And Yeah, yes, it's true though. As a writer, there's so many.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Especially when it's something that is you like so much and you get a bit obsessed with, and you just kind of, it's like how can you just keep focus? I also wanted to ask you, listening to you talking about Lina Poletti, and I was thinking, obviously she was the beginning of this, like she was the first one that you started thinking of to write this book. And I was wondering if throughout the process of writing this, if somebody else took her place, if you favored somebody else, and after researching, and if someone else became perhaps more important, and if you left Lina for somebody else.
Maybe in my
Are
heart,
you loyal to her?
But there is a way I can answer that, maybe that doesn't involve my leaving Lina Poletti, which I feel like Lina Poletti, in a way, leaves us. I mean, she's my idea of somebody who can see beyond the time that she lives in, the time that I live in. Someone who, I mean, I really think about this when I go down into the streets to protest. I think Lina Poletti, the spirit of Lina Poletti, my idea of Lina Poletti is there with us in the streets, saying, I put into this book some things that we say in Italy in the streets as part of these transfeminist protests. And one of the things that we say is this chant that says, insieme siamo partite, insieme torneremo, non una, non di meno, which means together we depart, together we shall return, we shall lose no one, there shall be not one, no one's life is disposable. We're not going to leave somebody behind. We're going to all go together. And that's about femicides, it's about, it's about the violence against all kinds of subjectivities, queer and trans people and racialized minorities. We can't just say, well, we lost one, it's not possible. And I think about that as a principle of Lina Poletti. And in that sort of idea for me that Lina Poletti is, or whatever we want to call this, that our histories, that our lineages, that our inspirations are still with us, that they don't die, they don't go out like candles, they stay, we carry them with us. I wanted to, so I started reading Virginia Woolf when I was really young, and I feel like I never really got over that experience of what she can do as a writer. And I was very drawn in writing this book by her idea of Orlando, which is written in a way also as a kind of act of love for Vida Sackville-West, and also kind of a joke. Sometimes it's ironic and a little sly, but is something that gives Orlando as a character many lives. And I thought, well, if I'm going to imagine the most I can a constellation around Lina Poletti, let me also imagine, as Virginia Woolf imagined for Orlando, many lives for Lina Poletti, that she goes on and that she has more lives than mortal beings do, that she can become beyond the span of a normal life. And so in that way, and in many other ways, I think I've been just marked indelibly and forever by Virginia Woolf and by what she can do in language. It doesn't make her a perfect human being. I don't ask that.
No, we know that. But that doesn't matter for this case. Yeah.
But what she has done with language and with ideas and with ways of putting feminism, of putting queerness into language, and putting light into language, and putting the way that someone walks into a room into language. I feel like I could read Virginia Woolf, describing the telephone book, basically.
Yeah. Yes, I'm with you on that. I adore her. I do, and I start the more I read, and it's one of those things you read again, and you just carry on, sort of mesmerized by what she's done. And the language, yes, the language for writers, that is just so appealing and just so gorgeous to look what she's done. So it makes total sense, and it's almost like also how it finishes a little bit with her, doesn't it? So you kind of went, almost full circle in a way.
Yes, yeah, and it was, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about Orlando, but it was my fantastic editors at Gallibegger, so Ellie Miller and Sam Jordanson, who read the manuscript and accepted the manuscript, and I'm so grateful, and really worked with me very deeply to balance the book, to see it, and I couldn't see it as a whole. I could only see what I had written, and they said to me, you know, what if you go back and look at the early life of Virginia Woolf? Like, what about her first journals? Did you read those again? And so I went back, and that experience of seeing her writing when she's, 17 years old, let's say, I mean, she starts when she's 15, that's what we have, was so illuminating for me. So that changed in a way the shape of the book, and it made it, I think they were right, my editors. It made more sense to have a kind of long interweaving of Virginia Woolf as a writer and as a person, so that when the kind of Orlando moment arrives, and Orlando as a book, does something very meta, which is it announces the day of its own publication by saying, Orlando came into the world as a book on the day when and then it does actually come into the world. And so there's that kind of rush at the end towards the meta-literary, towards the fantastic, like it announces its own arrival in the world. So to get there, I think my editors were absolutely right that I had to start much earlier, and I'm grateful to them for that.
Yeah, I see that, and it starts with Virginia Stevens, and you kind of start from there. Then she goes on, and she was very subversive in that way. I think all the things she did. And one last question I want to ask you.
Okay, then I have a question for you after this.
Yes, I'll ask you, and then you ask me. I think. Because you're talking about the we and the collectiveness and all of that is so important in the construction of the book and the structure and the form of the fragments and all of those things we discussed. I just wanted to ask if you don't mind commenting a little bit on this subject, which is, I don't know if you probably followed this, but we, like yesterday or 2 days ago here in the UK, there was this passing, you're aware of that. So we're just talking, this is probably such a close thing to your heart, because we're talking about, this book is about this, and we're talking about queer and trans rights and all of that. And here in the UK, this just happened. So I just want you to comment on the importance of writing fiction that touches this sort of subject, and what difference you think that could make, if any.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but if there is some chance that somewhere it might, then I'm going to keep doing it. I mean, I believe in an intersectional transfeminism as probably the only way forward that we have, and it's discouraging and kind of terrifying to see this pull backwards towards these entrenched structures of power and oppression that are all interlocked. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not like misogyny is separate from transphobia. They come from the same desires for power and control, and to oppress people, and to tell us who we are and what we do and what we can't be, and and I think that whatever it is that we can do, those of us who are writers, those of us who are translators, activists, those of us who move in any circles where we create, where we make, where we connect, where we have voices, it's the time to be together and to speak and to make together and to connect and try to do whatever we can, because I mean, I don't know how to say this nicely, but frankly, like, white supremacist cis heteropatriarchy is not going to resolve itself, unfortunately, because we could all be doing other things. I could be reading a lot more novels. Check the glove, and I'm sure everybody else has better things to do with their lives than like this. Yeah. But I don't know if fiction helps, but it's what I can give, and it's something that I mean, books inspire me. So if there's some way in which I can connect or give or inspire somebody else, then it's a gift back to me,
Yeah, and also when you were talking, I just realized I was thinking, you probably really thinking of this because you are American, you're living in Rome, you're living in Italy.
Yeah.
It's all going on, Selby. It's just really it's rather frightening. I think,
It is.
and
Sometimes it's hard to go on, but you know what keeps me going besides books is the idea that, you know, it's not just me. I'm one tiny part of this, and it's the possibility of the collective, of alliances, of, and also I think about the fact that, like, okay, so their side of the movement, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of money, they have a long history of like domination and oppression. We have better books, we have better parties, we have, I don't know, wittier people. It's more fun.
I
It's more,
agree.
you know, I mean, if there's somebody, yeah, if there's people I want to stay up late at night talking to about books and film and life and the future and possibility, I mean, you know, it's not the neo-fascists, let's just say.
Wonderful. Brilliant.
Can I ask you my question?
Right.
Or can I have two questions?
Yes, of course.
Good. So, I mean, so I said, you know, I admire translators a lot, and that's in part because I have tried translating and I am terrible at it, which makes me admire translators more. But one thing I wonder about is, like, even for a very gifted translator like you, what are the challenges, or what maybe in this case in particular, what was, I don't know, what was difficult or interesting, or what did you feel like you were grappling with, that you know, that you could talk about?
Thank you so much, but I actually haven't been translating for that long, to be honest, and I just, it's still, to me, every time I just finished another Catherine Mansfield, which I absolutely adore. You know, talking of, I actually translated Virginia Woolf, Fresh Water, her only play, and yeah, so it was so interesting, and especially because it was supposedly a not serious book that she wrote. She wanted to try it anyway. I think in this, after Safo or As Filhas de Safo, I think in this case it was a challenging book because not only because I wanted to be very careful about maintaining this little mosaic, and you know, try to. I really wanted to try and keep, because the way you write, it sometimes can be very poetic and it's prose, but I didn't want to miss any of that. So, for example, this fragment I just read, there is so much in there. Like, how do I pass to the reader, to the Brazilian reader, what actually touched me in that? How can I put that, the fact that her mother didn't say a thing, but she did say a lot? How can I put that across? So it's just such a difficult task, of changing words and trying to find the word, and just refining things and get rid of others, and just it's just almost endless. To a point, I'm sure Autêntica will agree, I just had to deliver the book because it was just taking too long, and it was just
Writer, yes,
exactly, it was forever. It would never end. So also, I think, to me, it was challenging, but also really fun, is to get to know so many people, personalities, characters. That was incredible. There were so many of them. Some I never heard of at all, and some I have heard of, but I wasn't really familiar with them. And some of them I was thrilled to see them there, like Virginia and, you know, some other ones. So it was, the challenge was basically that I tried to keep the impact it had on me, why I liked it so much. I wanted this to come across in a way, and who knows, fingers crossed, people will feel the same way.
Well, we've heard so far, both of us actually, from readers of your translation. I just met someone. I was at a literary festival in Venice, Incroci di Civiltà, and a reader came up to me and said, this is amazing. It's Nara who translated this. I'm so excited. So
That is so funny.
I'm fans. Yes, and yeah, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question, actually. So you're not only a translator, you're also a writer in your own right. And I wonder, you know, when you're translating, what parts of the sensibilities of being a writer, what parts of your creativity or your imagination or your gift with language, how do you feel like that moves into your translation? Or are there things where you have to block a bit? I don't know.
Yeah, I have different hats on. This hat on and that hat on. It's strange because as you know, when you're writing is such freedom, we just can go anywhere with that, and no one's watching, kind of thing. So just do whatever you want.
The drafting, watching the drafting, right?
Exactly. So just go do whatever you want to do with it. But with the translation is I find it so, I feel it's a little bit more pressure in a way, because it's almost like, think that if you have your own child and you take your child to a park, and if your child runs away, you don't worry too much. But if you're taking someone else's child with you, you get really nervous and you don't have fun and you just keep watching that. And it's a little bit like that.
And it ran away. I understand. Got it.
It's just like, you're really responsible for that. You have to be responsible for making that work in another language, because you have a beautiful piece, and how can you make that beautiful in another language so people will feel what I felt? So I think it just try to make it very loyal to what it was. Never change a thing, obviously not, but just try to organize things in a way that the language in Portuguese, in this case, will shine as well as the original. So it's a very hard task, I find, translating, but it's very I also find it fascinating, because I love words, and just it's such a close thing with words, isn't it, when you're translating it, because you get to look at them in such a depth that you sometimes you don't. So that's pretty much it.
Yes, well, thank you for giving me the chance also to learn from you as a writer, as a translator, as an interlocutor. I really appreciate it. And should we do more questions, or was that good?
I think I just want to thank you, and that's it. And thank you so much, Selby, for your time. You're absolutely delightful to talk to. I was a little nervous to start with, because I said I was I don't know, I was just so nervous to talk to someone that I admire, and but you've just been absolutely delightful. So thank you so much for your generosity and your time.
I'd like to thank you for this conversation, and Autêntica also for accepting your very beautiful proposal to translate out of love and interest. And I would like to thank your late friend.
Always.
Thank you, Nara's late friend, for not time and permitting you, Nara, to browse around in a bookshop, which you never know what's going to happen in a bookshop.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Selby.